everyone, Sinix here, and I just wanted to do a short video talking about my experiences in the art world and things like that. I'll show some of my old art, and it should be a lot of fun. So first off, I'll talk a little bit about my history in the art world, because I didn't go to art school or anything like that. So some people have asked like where I'm coming from and stuff like that. But I started out as a little kid. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be like a Disney illustrator. But that kind of died off, and like all throughout grade school, high school, all that stuff, I actually just wanted to be a computer programmer. So I was spending all my time on that. And in fact, that's where the name Sinix comes from. I was also like really big into reading books and stuff, and cyberpunk. So I was reading the book Snow Crash, and they have like a hacker organization called Black Sun, and I was using that name in all my stuff, on my AOL screen names and like video game stuff at the time. I was using Black Sun, and I think on one game or something it was taken, so I went with Black Sun X. So people were just calling me Sun X, and eventually when I went on from that to make a name for something else, I decided that I would stop just kind of copying something generic, and instead I'd come up with something slightly original. So I just kind of played with it a bit and made up Sinix. So that's the story. There's no like real significance. So that's the story. It's just kind of something I made up, not that interesting. But near the end of high school, I actually started to question this whole computer programming thing. Maybe that's because I've been doing it so much in my free time, but it was just kind of not what I needed it to be. And the thought of like working for someone else and just kind of like, sitting there writing code, it suddenly started to worry me. So after high school, I didn't go to college, and this was kind of, upsetting to a lot of people. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I bounced around from different things. I wanted to be a writer because I was, reading a lot of books like Chuck Palahniuk and Kurt Vonnegut and things like that. But that wasn't really working out. I made a DeviantArt account, and this was back in 2002. You can see my DeviantArt card. The first things I uploaded were actually written stuff, like crappy fiction. So I messed with that. It wasn't quite working out. I tried some other possible career opportunities. At one time I was trying to become a pilot, which is kind of weird, and by the way, completely terrifying when you have to go up into a plane for the first time and you feel that complete responsibility where you can like faint or something and then you'll just die because there's no, safety net or no person to bail you out. So that was kind of an interesting experience, but I wound up getting airsick too often, so it just wasn't for me. So I went back to the drawing board. What am I going to do? It's literally, I guess, the drawing board, because I started trying to draw. And that was mainly because I was super into like Invader Zim at the time and Jonan Vasquez and things like that. I had my hair dyed black, and I started to try to draw in a very similar style to his, just because I didn't really care about being a great artist. I just wanted to get stuff out there and basically tell, funny stories, do what he was doing. And that was kind of my goal at the time. So my art wasn't that good, and I'll start showcasing some of that off.
So this is going to be the amusing and hopefully inspirational part of the video where you get to see some old art, and you can see here I was starting off with something more anime, and obviously it's on notebook paper and the quality's not that great, but I do like the expression of the guy in the top left. He's just kind of like, oh. But if you looked at these and had to guess how old was the person that made this wonderful art, you'd probably say like 12 or something. I don't know, but I was 19. Oh, that's horrible. So I wasn't starting with much, but I did try some digital art at the time as well. And if anyone's into Final Fantasy X, you can see this sweet little nugget of fan art. But moving on, you can see here that I was doing more of that Jonan Vasquez style, like I mentioned. And I was getting slightly more comfortable with the digital coloring process, and this was working out a little better for me. Obviously, it's all very like dark and, teen angsty and stuff like that. But at least my art was mildly improving. But that didn't last for too long because I decided that it's kind of lame of me to just kind of be copying someone else's art style. So I moved on and I started going back to more anime stuff, which is weird because it also kind of had this weird cross section where I had been doing the Jonah Vasquez stuff. So all my anime characters were suddenly slightly more elongated and weird, and sometimes they had big bulgy eyes. And it was just this weird mix of stuff. And you can see like the one on the left is like sketched on top of a Terrigen image, which I was just experimenting with all kinds of weird stuff. But at least the one in the middle is looking like I'm starting to get some grasp of like I don't know, coloring in Photoshop. Except whatever I was doing on like the fabric and everything is just like complete craziness and nonsense. I don't really know what I was going for with those folds, and so I obviously didn't know much about the different fundamentals of art, but at least I was experimenting with a lot of different ideas. This was probably the culmination of that time period where you can see I was even more comfortable with digital coloring, and obviously I was still just, doing that anime style stuff and coloring under the line work. But this was getting slightly better, and I was getting more interested in art and also experimenting with tons of different things, such as animation, and you can see here some of those early animations. This first one I'm going to show you guys is a more traditional approach where I just drew a bunch of sketches in my sketchbook, and then I took them into Photoshop's Image Ready and combined them all into a smooth animation, or at least somewhat smooth. But after that, I got more into like those stick figure animations that were really popular at the time, so I did a bunch of those violent and crazy ones. You can see here, it was a lot of fun just kind of learning the effects and messing around with them. I think this upcoming one was my favorite. Pew, 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 pew. But yeah, I tried some more complicated ones. There's this one here that I think I spent 2 days straight on this one, just sitting in front of my computer in Photoshop, onion skinning one layer into the next to do a frame by frame animation that had hundreds of frames just in a row. But it was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun doing these because it taught me a lot of interesting tricks about doing special effects type stuff, and how to like really make it look like there's a lot of speed going on or a lot of action. Basically doing like little tricks in the animation to make it look like it's really action packed and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun. I had a good amount of fun doing these. I only did them for like a week or two, but they were a blast. Impossible! But anyway, so I think that's it for these little animations, but I was still doing all kinds of exploration into creative outlets.
And it was around that experimental time that I stumbled onto conceptart.org, which was just this mind-blowing place full of amazing professional artists. I think the website had just started out, so all the people that were there were like a kind of a community of friends. They mostly went on to form Massive Black, so it was people like Andrew Jones and Jason Manley and Wesley Burt and Marco Georgievic, and there were also a lot of amazing other artists there like Justin Sweet and John Foster and Sparth and Hardcore Pigs and Bengal, and all these artists, and they were updating like sketchbooks on a daily basis, and there was just this amazing art. I'd never really seen that energy in people's artwork before that I saw in their sketches, and the way they talked to each other and just their enthusiasm for like really like understanding art and improving all this basics of composition and things like that. And it just kind of inspired me immensely, and all of a sudden I wanted to do what they were doing. It was during that time that I also went to the conceptart.org workshop, which was amazing. It was in San Francisco, and it was basically just this like community vibe of like a bunch of artists all trying to inspire each other and get better at art. And the feeling, I don't know, the vibe there was just kind of amazing, and it left me like just radiating these vibes of like wanting to be an artist for like months to follow. I was so inspired and driven. I was updating my sketchbook on concept art regularly. I was interacting with other artists. I was making friends. I was doing open canvases with people, just all kinds of stuff. Anything I could, anything that was related to art, I was just eating it up.
So let me just quickly show off some of the art from the time. It was mainly sketchbook stuff. I was working a lot in my sketchbook, and I was working with pens mostly, either with a brush pen or with a Pilot High-Tech C, which is just a thin lining pen. But I was doing about 2 to 3 pages like this a day, just every single day, just cranking out stuff. I'd always be sitting with my sketchbook and drawing. So that was a really productive time, and I'll kind of go forward through time. You can see these first faces are kind of slightly anime-ish. They don't quite look right. But if I go through forward, I get slightly better. I'm doing more like photo practice. There's a little bit of self-portrait stuff in the bottom. I was also experimenting with kind of loosely finding thumbnails and working on my design stuff. And you can see pretty much on all the pages, there's gonna be like a lot of faces because that was like my go-to thing. I'd practice drawing faces. Either I'd practice maybe a couple from photo reference, but most of them, almost 90% at least of them, are just, off the top of the mind. So they're trying to draw without reference. But you can also see there's like a lot of hands and things. I'll just go through like bursts where I'm drawing a bunch of hands or studying one thing or the other. So I was filling a lot of sketchbook pages during that time, and luckily I have a lot of them uploaded because I was sharing them all on concept art. But you can see my faces from the mind are slowly improving, and I'm also experimenting a lot more with like graphical stuff. I'm kind of going crazy at times, bringing in like orange markers and really experimenting with like visual graphic-y stuff. Just kind of trying out everything I can. And you can see there's also some photo ref practice of like machinery, old cars. Those things really improve your industrial design sense. So there's more faces, more things like that. Some creatures here on the right, practicing some from reference and some without. But I never got that far into creature stuff. This was mainly just for activities on concept art. And here you can see some typical stuff, which is just lots of studying anatomy, studying, the muscle structures, studying tons of like head stuff and faces. You can see there that one page is just like drawing faces from, like tons of angles, as many like subtle angle differences as I could. And some of them aren't that great, but at least I was like trying to practice, stuff like that. And lots of torsos and things like that, and studying the arms, how they look differently when they're bent, how the shoulder will look differently if like the hand is palm up or palm down, bending the elbow, just every minor thing that's important when you're doing art. And it's not like the in-depth anatomy, it's just the anatomy you see. So like the main superficial muscle structures and things like that. So you can see more practicing, lots and lots of practicing. And my faces were getting slightly better, just little improvements here and there. Once again, just a good example of what I was doing on each page, which is tons of faces and hands and, whatever was, on my mind that particular day. Because this was definitely going on every day for a good 6 months, I would say, just nonstop drawing. So here's some more pages, and this is getting near the end of things. And I started doing more digital sketching as well, and you can see some of that here. But I wasn't that comfortable with it yet. But I was definitely becoming more comfortable with it, as well as trying to start doing some digital painting, just freeform painting. No like just line work coloring, but actual painting. Which is a lot more complicated than just doing like line work coloring. You have to really understand how to turn a form. But anyway, I was also doing a lot of open canvases, like I mentioned, and these are a couple of those open canvas sessions. These open canvas sessions also really helped improve my muscle control with my tablet and things like that, while having fun with other people. So I got slightly better with digital painting. I was mainly just doing faces and things, much like I do on my sketchbook. I started, digital painting the same way by just doing a lot of digital painted faces and things of that sort, maybe like upper torsos. I was mainly trying to show off stuff you guys haven't seen at all, but here are a couple pieces from that time period that helped me get more noticed on DeviantArt and things like that. And these were both for activities on conceptart.org. I think one was for a competition and the theme was Demon Prince, and the other one was just a basic mech competition. But this stuff was made all within like 6 months of really getting involved at conceptart.org and, drawing every day. So I improved a ton during just that short period of time, which really condensed hard work.
And it was around that time I started getting tons of job offers too, and they were like crazy job offers, like to move to Australia or to like Finland or to Canada, or I think one of them was like to work on like a MechAssault game in Chicago. and just all this crazy stuff. And it was completely overwhelming to me because I wasn't looking for jobs. I was just, sitting there trying to improve because I was surrounded by these artists that were way better than me, and all I could think about was getting to their level. So that was really all I was focused on. So I didn't take any of these crazy jobs. I experimented with like taking a couple freelance jobs, and I took like one job from EA that was like completely out of my league, and it didn't go so well.
But I can show off a couple of my small freelance jobs. The first job I ever had was to do like a drop ship type thing, and I had to do a full 3D turnaround of it because it was meant to be for a 3D project. But I don't think it ever came about. And I also did some work for like a comic company doing some freelance illustration stuff, and those were okay, but I don't think they ever used those either, so oh well.
But it was also around that time in my mid 20s where I was going through a lot of anxiety. What am I going to do for a living and all this stuff? And it started building on me, and I started worrying way too much about my future and just getting completely stressed out. And I was having anxiety attacks anywhere I was going. I was shaking all the time, and my heart rate was like 160, and it was just a complete mess. So that went on for like a year, and I completely started dropping off from art. My drive just went away. During the start of that was actually when I was doing my YouTube videos, and a lot of people have asked why I sound so depressed in those videos. And that's why I kind of was depressed. I was having anxiety problems. I was just in a bad state of mind. That lasted for a while until I finally swallowed my pride and, got some medication for it, which helped alleviate some of that stress and get me back to where I was. But the damage to my art had already been done. I wasn't drawing every day, and once you fall out of habit of doing something, it's kind of hard to get back into that habit. So I was just slacking around, playing video games. I think it was during that time I actually got into the Something Awful community and started making Let's Plays, which was just starting out at the time, so I met a lot of interesting friends, like Slow Beef and Scarboy and Proton John, Psychedelic Eyeball, Crack On. Like, all these guys, we used to, like, kind of get together and brainstorm like video game stuff, play video games together. And that actually was really helpful for me because it helped me have a lot more fun. It also helped me get comfortable with, making videos and talking to my computer and just kind of interacting with people, because art can be like very solitary and sometimes you don't have those interactions.
A worm
Is Sinix
inside.
using a flamethrower in water?
What a difference.
I would like to tell that the Atari thread really sucks ass.
And that was an interesting period of time. It's funny because most of those guys have actually gone on and they're still doing like those types of videos. I think Slow Beef is doing his Retsu Prey on his account, and he's had pretty good success with that. And the Proton John is like also famous for doing video game videos, and like he's got his own like fan club, and it's really weird for me to see them like that.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, I think Wheeler's finally getting some.
That was psychedelic.
That's 20 years of that's 20 years of love.
Oh my.
But before I move on completely from that topic, I would just like to say there's a couple, if you're into video games, that is, there's like a couple people that still do Let's Plays that are just amazing. And I think people have finally stumbled onto like what makes really good videos. But I just want to recommend these because they're awesome if you like wasting time. But one of them is Run Button, and they have a YouTube channel that's like Run Button.
What?
Oh man!
Like, you're just dragging her. What are you doing?
Great.
And the other one is Chip Cheesum and General Ironicus.
Okay, nobody say anything. Just look at 50's hips. Watch them move.
But anyway, this complete sidetrack. But I slowly drifted away from all that, and like part of me was also like nagging to get back into art, and I kept trying at like little moments here and there to get back into it.
So these are some images that were scattered about through those years, except the one on the left. I think that's actually a bit older, but I would sometimes find an excuse to do some digital painting. And more often, I would actually be doing like comical little cartoony looking things for random purposes. Obviously, I was playing some Ragnarok online at the time, did some stuff with that. But I experimented a little bit with different styles to see if that would motivate me. Once in a while, I would try to get back to the more design-oriented stuff, and I tried a couple videos here and there. You may also notice some of these images from the intro of the video, and they were just kind of fun little doodles. Mechanical stuff here and there, some Final Fantasy inspired mech designs thrown in, but that's about it. But I did experiment with getting back to the animation stuff, and I did a video on that, and I was mainly doing like little sprite animations and experimenting with other kinds of animations, all kinds of weird stuff. I even messed around with making my own little art packs for Niflis's Knit Stories game, and that was some fun. And some of those were a lot of fun, but I was still having trouble sticking with things for long stretches of time.
Once again, I got involved in video game stuff, and I was messing around in the fighting game community. I was going to tournaments and doing fun stuff, playing a lot of Street Fighter, and making new friends and having interesting experiences with that. And it was nice because eventually I started making friends with other artists again, which I think is the main key thing that I was missing when I was trying to get back into art. I just didn't have the art friends. So you need people to talk to that are into art. You need to see their inspiration. You need to be able to feed off some kind of inspiration. If you're just in a vacuum of just yourself and you don't know any artists, it's really hard to stay motivated. But if you're surrounded by other people who are motivated, then that makes it so much easier to just start doing art and feel good about doing art and go out and talk about art with people and all this stuff. So after all those years, I came back to YouTube and I started doing art stuff again. I did my Let's Explore DeviantArt. Then I started painting again with my Painting Faces video, which was mainly to help me get back to digital painting and feeling comfortable with it. As well as going over stuff that I kind of had forgotten that I constantly need to refresh myself and go over those fundamentals. So I've really been enjoying making different videos about art, as well as interacting with you guys and like seeing what you guys are drawing and giving critiques where I can, and just everything like that. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm just having a blast with it. So hopefully we can keep building up on what we've established and having fun, making more videos, keeping each other inspired, and doing all kinds of stuff like that in the future. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I'll be back with some more digital painting stuff shortly. Really?